I'm Dr. Ed Osborne, the chiropractic philanthropist. Here's my promise to you, Doc. I'm going to take you in 14 days and have you launched on your podcast. I'm going to give you everything you need, all the instructions you need to get up and launched. Here's the thing. I want you to first actually sit back, though, and I want you to imagine that you're a prospective new patient. And where do you go to actually look for a chiropractor in your area? Would you go to the Yellow Pages? Possibly ask a coworker or a neighbor. Where would you look for that chiropractor? Well, studies show that about 60% of people, maybe even more, I'd probably say it's more like 80% of people are actually going to go onto Google and they're going to search for that chiropractor. So they go, chiropractor Tulsa. You got to show up on page 1. Wouldn't everyone agree? Wouldn't that be an advantage? And I'm talking about you got to be in the first 5 or 10 of those people listed on page 1. Because let's face it, Doc, do you ever go to page 2 on Google? I mean, if you're on page 2, you just simply don't exist. So what's your advantage over all of the other listings that's on that page? Those websites. I mean, there's so many amazing chiropractors out there. Here's the advantage. You have a podcast. And your podcast shows up there. Now, that person, that new prospective patient, can click on that link and actually instantly hear your voice, which is 60 times more powerful than any website that there is. And here's the thing, now they're slipping into the slippery seduction of your chiropractic office and chiropractic in general, that shining light. Now, they're basically, you're building your authority and they're building your mega visibility with them and your celebrity, you could even say. So now they're going to actually link from your podcast to your website, and they're going to schedule a time possibly. Here's the beautiful thing. We're not done. Now that you have that podcast and they can hear your voice and they have that wonderful experience and connection with you, they can forward that via text, via email, any way they want, through social media, post it on someone's Facebook page, and they can say, hey, check out my chiropractor. Here's what he has to say about blank, whatever you want to have in your podcast, whatever your passion is. That is the power of podcasting. And I'm going to teach you how to do that in just 14 days. All right, Doc, podcasting is for innovators. It is a Jedi mind trick that I'm going to teach you so that you can actually up your SEO, so your search engine optimization, that you can actually start to funnel new patients into your office. Here's the beauty though, that actually becomes secondary to what we find is actually the most incredible, effect of actually having a podcast, and that is actually creating your own unique expression and message of chiropractic. Now, you might have been expecting that I would have some sort of flashy, green screen behind me and, maybe some sort of cartoons or animations. Not in this. This program speaks for itself. I'm about, no fluff. There's no BS. I'm going to show you exactly what you need to know and no more so that you can get up and running in 14 days. See, I'm number one. See, I've gone from being a nobody to being heard by 90,000 listens by doctors in just 5 months. And I'm going to show you how you can be number one as well. So anyone can duplicate the results that I have actually created. And I'm going to show you how to do that, Doc. Do you know what I love most about podcasting? Is there's nothing coercive. There's no tactics. There's no bait and switches. This is the most innovative marketing that you are going to experience in the last 10 or 15 years. And everyone can be doing it. I can't wait until iTunes has a flood of new chiropractic podcasts that are at the top of the charts in health or alternative health. And I'm going to show you how you can actually show up as a new and noteworthy, and I almost guarantee this, it doesn't work every time, but I almost guarantee this, that we can actually get you a new and noteworthy in the top 10 within the first 2 or 3 weeks of the launch of your podcast. Okay, Doc, I'm actually firing up my computer right now because what we're going to do is we're going to cut away to a screen share, and I'm going to show you exactly what we need to do in terms of defining your avatar. That means defining who is your listener for your podcast. We're going to talk about naming your podcast. We're going to talk a little bit about artwork and creation and how you can do that in a very inexpensive way. We're also going to talk about the different formats, whether it be interview or solo or both. And lastly, we're going to go through all of my tips for saving money with equipment. You don't have to go out and spend thousands of dollars to get this done. All right, so I'm going to meet you on the screen share in just a moment.
All right, let's get started. So you'll probably learn one thing about me, and that is that I don't like to waste time. So I'm going to try and cut as much fluff and the BS out of this program as possible. My whole purpose is really just to get you up and running with a successful podcast in the shortest amount of time. So greatest success, shortest amount of time. Sounds familiar, right? So what we're going to do is I want you to actually head, just for this introductory video, head over to the chiropracticphilanthropist.com/PT for Power 10 hyphen equipment. And what I want you to do is actually start looking at the equipment that you're going to be using. So let's kind of go through this really quickly. We're going to go more in depth later on in Module 2 on the tech. But basically, let's head right down to microphones. So it may take you a week or two to get your mic. I'm going to show you the two most popular mics that are on the market for podcasting that, you know, you can spend $300-$400 on a microphone, but that's completely not necessary. What I want you to do is look or even consider, you know, you can pick this up at a Future Shop or a Best Buy, which is a Yeti USB microphone. USB meaning it actually plugs directly into your computer. You just need to actually select in preferences and make sure that that is the mic that you're using and not your internal mic. And this is, again, the microphone of choice for many podcasters. I do prefer the Audio-Technica ATR 2100 USB mic. And the thing I like about this is it also has a different output in case you decide to use a switch or have different people that are interviewing or podcasting with you in the same room. So this is a nice option. Again, I like to, and we'll talk about this, one of my principles is keep it simple. So the Audio-Technica ATR, it looks like this. If you head over to Amazon, you know it's $85. Now, this is the mic I have. It comes with a short stand, so you're going to want to actually look at getting a different stand for that. Now, let's continue down. Headphones, very important. Again, you can probably spend, you don't need to go out and get Dr. Dre Beats. You only need either earbuds or headphones to stop echoes and reverbs. So this is what I use, the Sonys. They were $14. I think this whole, you know, everything I bought as a package off of Amazon cost me, gosh, I don't know, maybe $200 for everything. Now, going down to mic stands. Now, the importance of having a pop filter cuts out a pops, flops. It cuts out any clicks, any reverbs, any vibrations as well. So this is very important. Do not forget to get this. These pop filters, again, you're looking at a pop filter is going to cost you anywhere from $6 to you could pay $30. All you need to make sure is that it does have a long enough extension so that you can actually move it around and you want it a certain distance from the mic. Now, continuing down, we actually have the microphone boom or stand. Very, very important. You will learn that you cannot have the microphone in your hand up against your face if you're reading notes, if you're interviewing, if you are, you know, trying to convey a message, if you're doing something on your computer, which you often are at the same time as you're podcasting, you're doing other things with your hands. You need them, making notes, especially if you're interviewing, because you're going to be completing show notes as you go. So I always use a boom. And I have a very simple boom, something like this with my microphone. And it also keeps the microphone a specific distance from your mouth the entire time. So you'll notice that you don't have, so if I go away from the microphone, you can see that the sound would actually change. And as I come closer to the microphone, or if I come right up on the microphone, the sound would change. So you want to make sure your sound is actually very consistent. You don't want to be kind of, you know, hitting the microphone and things like that. So let's continue. Recording software. So I recommend GarageBand. This is what I use for Mac. I'm going to recommend that everyone use GarageBand. If you have to go out and buy a Mac, please, you know, consider that. What I did is I actually went out, I bought a Refurb Mac, and that's what I started with. And so it was about $600 for that refurb, and it works beautifully. That's what I use for my editing, recording. It worked beautifully. Also, it comes into recording for your Ecamm. So if you are going to be doing interviews, it's very important, I think, for sound quality that you have the Ecamm, that you have the Mac, that you have that GarageBand. Now, the other option is you can use a PC. If you're using PC, you would want to be using Audacity. There's other types, and there's also Pamela for recording interviews. And I'll go, roughly over those as well and cover those. But they're both free software. You can see you would just download this onto your PC, and Pamela as well, which for recording, and we'll cover recording interviews in a moment in module 2. iTunes account. So you want to make sure that you do have an iTunes account and that you are signed up with them. And the reason is you are going to be submitting your podcast to iTunes to be listened to by the world, 143 countries. So you might as well sign up and have an account now. If you don't already, make sure that you have also that software installed, so that you want to make sure that iTunes is installed onto your desktop so that you can actually do what's called ID3 tagging for SEO, so people can find your podcasts. And, so you can see here, these are my episodes or podcasts. And what I've done is I've actually tagged each one. If you go to Get Info, you can see my picture is here, my name, the title. You could see who is the artist, who the podcast information as well. And you can even go to comments, and there's a brief comment, and I'll talk to you a little bit about, the length of that as well. And I'll show you how you would actually take that and then import it into an external server. Okay, so that's everything that you need to get started. So that's your first exercise, Doc. Start going through this information, see what you think is going to be best for you, and then make sure one other thing is that your boom, so your extension arm that's holding your microphone, does fit your microphone. Don't make that mistake. If you do decide to go with the Yeti, make sure that you get a boom that actually fits it properly. Don't overspend, because I don't think it's necessary. You can always upgrade and get different mics and things like that as you go along the way. But make sure, first of all, that we create a good podcast, that you get it out there, that you're getting downloads, you're hitting the mark before you start spending extra dollars. A very, very vital step in the process of creating your podcast is defining your avatar. And that is your listenership. Who are you speaking to? You can't speak to everyone. And they actually say that this year, so 2015 coming up, is the year of the niche. And so what you want to do is niche down as small a group as possible, that a target specific group that you actually want to talk to. And that's what it's mostly about. Not as many downloads, but you can see that my niche is chiropractors, but I'm going to show you exactly what my niche is and how specific I got on this process. And that is part of the often overlooked aspects of developing a podcast. If you go to iTunes, you'll see that it's literally a graveyard of dead podcasts. So people who have published maybe 8 or 10 podcasts and then just given up. Now that is because they didn't have a purpose. They didn't have their why. They didn't have a clearly defined podcast avatar. So let's go ahead and get started here. So we want to decide, what is your ideal listener? Not unlike in practice, when you're looking at your ideal patient. So I have in mind exactly what my ideal patient is in my practice, but you also want to think about that with your podcast. So who is your target demographic? And I want you to be as specific as possible. I mean, get down to the point where you're actually naming that person. I mean, if you want to talk to golfers who have tendinitis, that could be a very specific niche. If you want to talk to gardeners who love roses, it has to be that far down niched. So here's my niche. It's actually Joe Cairo. So obviously he's male. He's in his 30s. He has 2 kids, 4 and 8, boy and a girl. Not unlike actually me. So I try to speak to people who are like myself. And I think that's why I connect with so many doctors who are like myself. So practices 30 to 35 hours per week. So quite a few number of hours. Wants more balance and family time. He's 0 to 5 out and struggling. He's come up against quite a few obstacles. We call it being on the hamster wheel. And he's maybe drowning in debt. So again, that where they're paying off their loans, but not really getting any success. And I've actually even seen this in practice too, where you could start to have one of those really great months, but it just means you spent more money too. So we want to make sure that these people are very specific in our terms of our avatar. And so subluxation based, open to concepts and ideas, or new concepts and ideas. He feels he has no time. He feels he can't afford a mentor, so maybe he has no leadership or mentorship in terms of coaching or consulting, and he feels isolated possibly. So is goal driven, so looking for measuring money or collections or visits, and he wants to make an impact in his community. That's my specific avatar. So I want you to get that clear on who you are speaking to. And this will act as the litmus to, everything that you do. So when you come out with marketing for your podcast, when you come out with, anything that you're going to do, like an interview, a guest, put them up against that litmus of Joe Cairo or whoever it is that you're speaking to and go, what would they want to hear? What questions would they ask? And that's where you start to see the massive growth. Okay, one of the most important steps that you're going to have is actually naming your podcast. When you're starting your podcast, make sure that it's something that you're very passionate about. It shouldn't be about the economics. It should be about something that you are really interested in, a message that you want to share. Now, often podcasts are created to promote a product, and it's very few podcasts actually are monetized and actually make money. That is the very small percentage. But there is a product that is behind that. So when people listen to you, when they get that free content that you are passionate about, when you do present them with a product, they are more apt to buy it. So pick something you're passionate about. I don't care if it's about pediatrics, if it's about orthotics, if it's about gardening. Make sure that it's something that you are passionate about. Pick a very specific niche as well. Now, next thing, when we're looking at making a podcast, we want to make sure you have a good brand. When you have your brand, stick to it. Do not deviate from your brand. Very, very important that you do not deviate from your brand. People will be looking for that specific branding, so that picture, that name. There's a common error that people will relaunch their podcasts and redesign their podcasts time and time again. And each time you do, you actually lose your existing listenership. They can't find you. So that's very, very important step. Next, we want to make sure that your content is your SEO. What I mean by that is you should be more concerned about having good content and creating a good podcast for your listeners than you should about creating dollars and cents from it. So there's this common thread I see with podcasting, which is, how do I make money from my podcast? Whereas it should be about, how do I actually have good content? That is the most important thing, and that will attract listeners to you. The money will follow. Your podcast name should also be best served to reflect the content you're speaking of. So for example, the chiropractors, so you're speaking to chiropractors, it is a guide to marketing. Wow, great name. Anyone want to take it? Go ahead. The chiropractor's guide to marketing. Wow, I could really start to I would listen to that podcast. And we'll pull that up. Here we go. So if we go to iTunes and we were to look at, some of these podcasts that are, the most popular podcasts, then, these are the ones that you might want to look and see, well, what do the names look like? What does the artwork look like? Start to do some of that research, okay? Here's one that's called Sleepy Cabin. There's nothing to reflect actually what's on here. So I probably wouldn't listen to this. It tells me nothing about what's going on within this podcast. I wouldn't be attracted to that. So you do want to have, certainly in the name, something that tells them what you're going to be listening to, who is your niche, who are you possibly, and then also make it very specific in terms of, the artwork. Have it very relatable to, again, your topic. So I love this one here. How about Canna Insider? I suspect that one, just from looking at it, I can tell it's about what? Is it about cannabis? I'm suspecting it's got a cannabis leaf. So that would be a good idea. Just do a little bit of research on that. And then, of course, when you have some artwork, we'll throw it up on the Facebook page and get some information and some feedback, some transparent feedback from our Power 10 podcast group. When we're looking at podcast structure, this is the time where you really must make some hard decisions. And the reason that we say that is because you need to decide whether you are going to have a interview or a solo style, or you could even combine them. But I would suggest you pick one or the other. And so solo style might be something where you are giving information for 10 or 15 minutes. Maybe you are reading blogs that you've created. Maybe you are covering research or statistics, or you are reading, from certain pieces of literature that you've read, or sharing testimonials in your office. Maybe it's you're sharing your wellness your lecture, so your new patient lecture. Whatever it is, it could be solo. So you decide and stick with that program or the format. You could have interview style. Interview style, obviously, you're going to be interviewing guests. Now, realize that there is a lot more energy required with interview style. First of all, you need to schedule people. You need to send out multiple emails to have them be ready and actually tell them what they need and the requirements. And we're going to cover all of that in this program in Module 2. And you also want to know or be very, very clear if you're going to be driving some sort of a product or if this is just for information. And so for information, for example, and you could even be driving a product such as, your product is chiropractic. Let's face it, folks. I mean, it is a product that we're driving, we're selling. So if you are creating your wellness workshops, your nutrition workshops, I don't care, it could be anything. Again, you're speaking on pediatrics, you're speaking on attention deficit. Whatever your topic is, decide what you're going to be doing and what you're going to be promoting at the end, and also where you're going to be driving people back to. So you want to make sure that you are very, very clear on your purpose of your podcast. What is the relevance? Okay, who is it that is this information is going to be relevant to? So you want to make sure that this is something that people are going to be open to and that you can market it to and that they will listen. If you are picking a group of people that is a small listenership, then expect small downloads. You can still have a major impact on that arena. And what problem are you solving? So some people might be very interested in how to create a fly fishing lure. That would be a very specific niche. You could be solving a problem for them as well. So it's very difficult to find that information. You could be talking about people specifically with disc injuries. Okay, again, a very specific, very, very small niche of people. You could even be talking to people who are very interested in nutrition. So whatever dietary recommendations you might have. So again, that is aside from chiropractic. Make sure that when you pick your length that you are consistent with that. For example, the chiropractic philanthropist, my goal is to keep it within 30 to 35 minutes. We do find that we have higher downloads when it's a shorter podcast. Think about it, Doc. You go to iTunes, you choose a podcast you would like to listen to, and you just want to try it out. Well, you look at it and you go, okay, well, I could choose one that's an hour and 20 minutes, or I could choose a podcast that is 20 minutes. Which would you choose? Probably 20 minutes. That you don't want to get too invested into that until you decide, hey, this is really great, valuable content. Then you would invest more time in that podcast. But what we do notice is consistency, and we want to make sure that the length is always the same. So if I have a podcast that is an hour long, I actually split it into 2 parts.
So we talked about your avatar. We talked about the different formats, solo or interview. We also talked about artwork and creation for artwork and inexpensive equipment that gives you amazing audio sound quality. Now, our next goal in the next podcast is to take the tech and make it less techy. We're going to talk about recording in GarageBand, exporting that onto your desktop, making it super easy to create what we call like an MP3 audio file, how to store that, how to submit that to iTunes. And then on actually video number 3, and just to touch base with that, I'm going to teach you how to tweak, massage, and torque your podcast titles and podcast for marketing perfection to funnel new people into your practice. You're one step closer to podcast greatness.